So in this case, I don't know what I'm saying. Okay. Well, I'm Krista, and we have here with us Ann Sia, who is running for SGA Vice President, unopposed, but we still want to get to know her. And then we have Jessica Malosh and Janelle Tenko, who are going to be our panelists today. And so, Ann, if you want just to give us a quick, introduction about yourself. And again, thanks, Miss Ennis, for letting us do this.
Okay, I'm Ann Sia, and one thing that I want to start with, thank you for one here, and Miss Ennis. Well, I am running for Vice President, and I've been a class officer for the past 3 years. I'm heavily involved in Kind Project, which is a volunteering club here at Stanton, as well as multi. And then on the side, I like to bake, but.
So, Janelle, if you want, you can go ahead and start us off, and then Jessica, and then we'll just go back and forth.
Okay, actually, I'm going to start off
go for it.
Okay. With your first question. What unique qualities do you possess that makes you a good candidate for this position?
Really easily able to see the good in other people, and I think that this is really helpful to my here as student. Because I'm always willing to take input from other students, from other peer members, and I think that it's important to have communication between the team, especially with us. And through my years of class office, I've definitely learned that a lot of great ideas don't come from yourself, but with other people. Yeah.
And my question for you is, your inspirations for running for SGA President, Vice President, originated from your passion for office and your leadership positions. So what are some additional interests of yours that could be beneficial for this position?
Well, I think definitely my passions that I've learned through other positions. So like, for one thing that I really wanted to stress in my platform was volunteering. And as I mentioned earlier, Kind Project is a club that I'm with. And I think there's a big difference between volunteering because you feel like you're forced to for bright futures or their school activities, versus finding something that you're really passionate about and wanting to help. And I think Kind Project has showed me that like volunteering is something bigger than just myself, something that I could help my whole community with. And it's something that I really love doing. And I think that through opening up more volunteer opportunities to underclassmen and to the kids of our school, I think that I just hope that they'll be able to find a passion in volunteering like I would.
That's great.
So I know you already touched on this a little bit, but what past experience do you have with being a leader?
Class office is one thing that I definitely want to mention. Planning events like prom, which sadly didn't happen this year, but that's one thing. Relay for Life, and our class's involvement with it. So planning events like that. But more than that, being involved in my school, in my class, with other officers, and especially through other officer positions like multi, being able to lead a team, a group of people so closely knit together to perform, to put on a show.
And with that in mind, what does being a leader mean to you?
It means more than just the confidence in my own ability, but also the confidence in other people, being able to put in my trust with not only my officers, my other officers, but also the people that I'm leading, and ultimately leading them to success. I think that's the most important takeaway here, is that I want to be able to lead a group of people to success, to graduate together. I think high school is something that it's a shared experience, and I think that we all do this together. Teamwork makes the dream work.
That's well said. Yes. So can you tell us a time where you went above and beyond in either school or in one of your leadership positions?
I actually really like to mention multi. Going above and beyond means means pulling off this show, especially with the time constraints that we had this year in comparison to last year's, and having to shove a bunch of practices together and make sure everyone listens. One really big obstacle, though, was actually in the beginning of the year, choosing people to be in the group, and worrying too much about hurting other people's feelings or like being exclusive almost. And that was something that I had to really keep in mind. That sometimes it's more about the success of our goal and this show than really caring too much about other people and what they had to think.
And in addition to the obstacles you face, there can be sometimes disagreements over a decision or plan that may occur. So if you encounter a situation in which the student population doesn't agree with one of your decisions, what would you do?
Well, first off, I think communication is the most important thing. Coming to a compromise is ideal because in either situation, both parties think differently. So a compromise is the most ideal. However, I think that it is important to keep in mind the majority and what would be beneficial to everyone or the majority of people. Because, of course, in a lot of cases, not everyone would be pleased, and that's okay. But definitely pleasing the students and pleasing and leading to their success is the most important thing to me.
So would you be willing to abandon one of your plans if that happens, if a majority of students don't agree with it?
What I said earlier is like the majority of what students want matter to me, and like what they want is ultimately my goal. Okay. And so leading to their success in helping them through whatever they need is of the utmost importance. Because I mean, all my plans here are to help the students. That's the main goal. But above all, it's just what everyone else wants. And as I mentioned earlier, student input's really important to me. Trusting other people is important to me. And even though that may disagree with what I believe, I still think that other people's perspectives is important to take into consideration.
So really knowing Stanton is a big part of the position you're running for. So my next question is, how familiar are you with Stanton and how the school functions?
I'd like to start off with what I mentioned earlier with my 3 years in office. Like functioning-wise, I understand how we need admin's approval and how everything works with like planning events and all. But also, one thing that is a problem is the disparity between classes and what really goes on between each class. I think that as in SGA, I think that gives me the perfect platform to open up our school to each other, to bring these classes together so we can understand what everyone needs to graduate.
And it's important to promote your plans and goals to all 4 classes. So why would student voters trust your judgment behind them?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm a realist. I wouldn't make a promise if I knew I couldn't keep it. And the 4 main plans that I had for SGA this year, I believe I can accomplish. Would you like me to touch on it? Or is it...
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, for one, recognizing student accomplishments, I think is a really easy thing that we could promote. In terms of the Stanton workload, I think that every student should feel accomplished and should feel appreciated for getting through that. But also with the responsibility of extracurriculars, their home life, the social life, I think in all aspects those should also be appreciated and recognized. So shouting out these kids for their accomplishments, whether it's like winning for a sports event or accomplishing something for a club, I think that promoting that for the whole school to see is something that's really important to me. Next up, the continuation of Mental Health Week. I think that there's this huge stigma around opening up about what's really going on. And I think it's important to stress that it's okay. It's okay to feel sad, to feel anxious, you know. Um, and I think that more people need to be able to feel like they have a home, that they're comfortable with the people around them. Next up, volunteering, which I mentioned earlier, which is a really big passion of mine. I want everyone to be able to find something that they're really passionate about, and it's not even like volunteering itself, but like the feeling of having the community and other people that you care about. I think that's something that we could easily do by like just mentioning opportunities for volunteering. Obviously, there are multiple places that is open to volunteering in JAX, but I think definitely stressing like underclassmen to start getting involved early, to really build upon that through their high school career. And then lastly, this is actually from an idea from the class of 2020, which is I think last year was when they gave us like study material for our APs, and I don't really know why that didn't continue, but I thought it was the most helpful thing. I think that again, with that I mentioned earlier, the class disparity, I think that this passing along of information about common APs that we all take would be beneficial to intertwining the classes together. And not only that, but like it's just helpful in general for our APs. I mean, we all have to take them, so might as well just help each other. Shared knowledge is the best knowledge. So I definitely think that all of these are accomplishable. I'm not going out of my bounds and saying like let's all just take a school field trip somewhere like crazy, but like I think that all these are accomplishable and I can do them, and I really think that this year will be a great year.
So with all of that, those goals, and you said how mentioning like opportunities for volunteering and also recognizing the student, like what platform would you use to actually get the message out to the whole student body?
I think it's important to realize that not everyone has like social media. So definitely using the remind systems. I mean, in the case of online schooling, we have Teams, which everyone has. But also, I think a lot of kids, a lot of students, we use social media. I think the incorporation of like all of the platforms that we have would be really nice. I think just keeping everything organized is the main thing, so people know where to go.
And you've already mentioned this with the class disparities, but what are some other school issues that still need to be addressed?
And other school issues. I think it kind of ties into class disparity, but like the competition between different classes, especially through like pep rallies. I know that they're really fun and competitive is like what brings the spirit together, but there's a lot of like hate that I see towards other classes, and like hate towards people in general throughout our school. I think that we all go through similar experiences here at Stanton, and I'd like to mend those arguments, the disparities between people, especially through like different friend groups and their disparities of their own. Basically, just bringing everyone together is my main goal. As I said earlier, teamwork makes the dream work, and I think that through everyone's cooperation together, from advice from upperclassmen and enthusiasm from underclassmen, I think that we can all do better together.
So you touched on the challenges that the school faces, but now what kind of challenges do you think that you would face individually in this position, and how would you solve them?
I'm definitely an overthinker. I like to be really thorough with things, so I spend a lot of time focusing on one thing until I get it done, which is kind of a big weakness for me because I'm willing to stay up really late working on things. But I think that all of this could be fixed through like communication with other peers, especially like knowing that my position is a shared position. I'm not the only officer in SGA, and really working together to create an organized group with different different roles and jobs for everyone to do when accomplishing a certain task. I think we can fix that. Yeah.
In your application, you expressed your love for Stanton and how that inspired you to become more involved in the school. So what is it about Stanton that makes it a great school, and how do you plan to contribute to it?
I think one of the main things, one of the main reasons why I even stayed here was just the atmosphere. The love that like the students have for their teachers and vice versa. I think it's so important to be surrounded by people that you can trust, rely on, people that are goal oriented and just as focused as you are in having a future. I think that's what I love about it. It's like everyone is so willing to like work together because you all go through the same things, and I think that it's really nice just being able to rely on teachers and asking them for input, or students and your peers, and I think that's what I love most about it. It's like you can't find that at many other schools.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you mentioned how interconnected Stanton is in your response. So how do you think, like, what ways could you like improve on that interconnectivity among peers in Stanton?
I think definitely student input, catering towards all classes. I definitely think that there's like a common stigma around the freshman class, especially. And experiencing from my freshman year in office and seeing that kind of passed down, it's like the freshmen are kind of always hated on when they first walk in, and especially because we don't have bridge this year, maybe through Corona. I want to make sure that like all classes feel welcomed in Stanton, and especially with the freshmen, it's intimidating to come from another school and like not knowing many people at this new place. But I think that through SGA, I can help like bring these classes together and help everyone understand, especially the officers, the competitive officers, that freshmen should be welcome too. And not only freshmen, just everyone in general.
And being the SGA vice president, it's important to maintain the support of all 4 classes in order for your plans to succeed. So, but there can be times where students don't look as favorably on the decisions you make. So how would you respond to criticism towards those decisions?
Again, like what I said, communication I think is important, and compromising between both parties. I think we're bound to run into a situation when one class doesn't agree, but ultimately a good heart, a good spirit, and spirit for the school. I think it's important for every class, especially as I've experienced in office, that it's important to look past the benefits of your own class, but like realize that you're part of a school, not just your class.
Mm-hmm. And so you already mentioned how you'll communicate with the student body and how important that is. So how will you communicate and collaborate with the other officers?
Definitely through bonding. From past class office experiences, I think that having a day set where it's just like you and the officers having fun together, and especially like staying connected through social media, through text, and just always maintaining this communication is important. And even past just interacting with the class or the officers through like text and social media, but really knowing them as people, and making sure that they know that you're a reliable person, that they can go to you for anything past just the responsible office.
And you place an emphasis on communication to make your plans possible. So how would you implement that system of communication if we continue learning in a virtual environment?
Definitely pushing for a common way of communication. So like Teams. I think what we have right now with the different classes and then SGA like announcing things. I think that's one main thing, like making sure everyone's like has this one platform of communication that is accessible to everyone. Because I know social media, like some people use other things more than others. And it just gets really messy. So I think just having like a reliable system. So Teams for one, but like this year I remember Remind being a really good use for our classes since everyone has it and the spread of information. So, yeah.
So we all know how collaborating is really effective in getting the things you want done. So can you tell us about a time when you had to collaborate with someone who was difficult to work with, and how did you resolve that tension?
I won't mention any names, but I remember this one time in office when we had different ideas for a pep rally theme, and we did run into an argument about it. But I think the main takeaway here is that, like, again, not everyone can get what they want, but the success of the pep rally in itself was the main goal, and what we focused on was what the rubric would cater towards and how we would get the most points. So I think that definitely keeping in mind, like, it's not only just what you want, but what would be beneficial in the end is important to keep in mind. And so we resolved that through just talking it out. And honestly, like, communication is just the most important thing, especially with the group.
Other than the group of students you are leading, there are various characteristics that set apart being an officer in SGA and an officer for your class, especially since you've been treasurer for 3 years. So, to you, what differentiates between office in SGA and office for your class?
I think that class office definitely gave me a platform to cater to my class, but SGA gives me the ability to cater towards my whole school. So one volunteer opportunity that we set up for the class the past years was Relay for Life, and of course it was great. It was beneficial for the kids in our class. It was fun. It was a great experience and helpful to the American Society. But being able to bring something like that to the whole school, I think that's where the big difference lies. Like just the ability to do more for the school.
So do you think that you will be able to balance your schoolwork and your extracurriculars with this position?
As a class officer, as a person that has other extracurriculars to focus on, I think I've had the experience to deal with them from junior year, sophomore year. And ultimately, the school is what matters most to me. And I've always put class office as a first priority and on top of all my other clubs. And the same goes for SGA. If anything, there's more like stress for me to focus on in SGA. My main goal here is to just really unite the classes together, to let everyone have an amazing high school experience that leads them to success for college. And I think that SGA.
And unlike the class officer where you lead and unite that particular class, for you it's 2021, an SGA officer ensures that the entire student population is heard and involved in your plans. So how will you avoid bias towards the class of 2021, since that's who you belong to?
I think definitely experience as an officer for all 3 years really taught me the different problems that each class runs into, and even so, like, what I really wanted to focus on this year, especially with Bridge not happening, is the freshmen and welcoming the freshmen into the school. I definitely think that although I had a good time with my class in class office, I think it's time for me to expand and do more. And to me, that really means focusing on people that might not have the same opportunities as upperclassmen. And the freshmen definitely, I think, need some guidance, and especially with Bridge not happening, I think that SGA would allow me to really have a platform to do so.
Can you tell us about a time when you had too many items on your to-do list, like you had too much homework or too many extracurricular activities, and how did you prioritize?
So one thing is that I mentioned earlier, I am an overthinker, which actually has some benefits to it. I'm really big on planning. I have my planner with me like 24/7, but time management is definitely a thing that I think I've caught on with throughout the years, and making sure that I keep track of due dates and priorities. So as I mentioned before, SGA would be literally my main priority in terms of extracurriculars and officer positions. So definitely just keeping everything organized, keeping everything planned, making sure I'm up to date. And especially with quarantine, it's really taught me that it's okay to take breaks and that they're beneficial. But ultimately keeping in mind that I use my time wisely, that I put priorities first, and big projects in mind at all times.
And what makes your plans for Stanton realistic?
Realistically, I think that not everything can be done, right? But I made sure that my platform and the promises that I made were achievable, things that I could work on at any time. I think that going over my points, volunteer opportunities, mentioning them as clubs want to promote their own events and volunteering events is one thing. I think that's definitely accomplishable with the amount of involvement that the students have at Stanton. There's so many things to look out for. So many clubs to be involved with. So ensuring communication with other clubs is one thing. Another thing, just keeping in mind that all the students need to be heard. So through my student accomplishment recognition point, I think that just utilizing our social media platforms and our ways of communication. So through the mind, through the teams, I think just making sure that everyone has a voice. It's the best way to tackle that.
So who has been your role model for this position?
It's probably one of my peers. I've worked with him in class office for the past 3 years, and seeing his passion, seeing how supportive he was in his role as vice president to Gokul, our class president, I think seeing like the trust between them and how they could rely on each other for more than just the class. I didn't admit it to him, but he's definitely a good role model for me. In terms of authority, I think Mr. Knight actually is probably one of my biggest role models at Stanton. I remember freshman year when he told me, after I won his poetry recitation tournament, he told me that I was going to do great things at Stanton, and hearing that from someone that was so influential, that to me like meant a lot, and it's what pushed me through the years to do more than what I thought I could. As a freshman, I never thought that I'd be running unopposed as vice president, but we are now, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the leaders and the role models. And I want to be able to be that person, that role model for underclassmen, especially with the amount of authority that I have as my officer positions. I think that giving them the opportunities, whether that's through volunteering or in multi, when I can put them in a dance and involve them in school activities. I think that being a leader for them, being a role model, being someone that they could rely on, look up to, I think that's most important.
It's also important to place an emphasis on your strengths, but we should also acknowledge our weaknesses as well. So what do you think is one weakness that you have, and how do you plan to overcome it?
A weakness that I have? I think that sometimes I can get caught up in my head, even like impulsive at some points. If I really have to do like a quick decision making, but I think that keeping in mind that I have other people to rely on, having the trust between my other officers is important to establish early on, and like knowing that I have other people to turn to when I'm in problems, because this is as SGA, it's so important to realize that like you're part of a team, and it's not just about you, and so I think communication, as I mentioned a million times earlier, is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. And so, of course, conflict resolution is a big part of being SGA. And so, if conflict arises between you and the other officers, how will you deal with that?
I think it's important that the officers come together as well. I think the most important thing that I've realized in class office is just even if you have disagreements, even if you don't really like the other person that you're working with, it's important to realize that, you know, you're working here for past your own benefits for everyone. And especially through SGA, I think it's so important to have a good relationship with the other officers, as nothing can be done without proper teamwork. So definitely just communication, compromising, and working out differences is the most important thing. And like differences, I don't think are a bad thing. I think it's good to see different perspectives and to keep an open mind. So even though we're all bound to run into disagreements, I think it's beneficial.
Mm-hmm. And this is my last question. So what will be your first order of business as SGA VP?
As I mentioned earlier, communication is really big. I think that having a day of dedication to bonding with my other officers, connecting ideas together and common plans, and really just planning for the whole school year is the most important thing here. And even keeping in touch with the other officers of other classes, admin, Miss Ennis too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most important thing that we have to tackle first.
All right, well, I think that about wraps up our interview with Ann. Thank you again to Jessica and Janelle for interviewing her, and to Miss Ennis for letting us do this. And are there any final remarks you'd like to make to the students?
Yeah, I'd like to say that even though I'm running unopposed, I'm not only just an officer here. I'm also a student. I'm a peer. I'm here for everyone, regardless of what they need, and I want everyone to know that I'm here if they need to talk to me about anything, whether that's advice, whether that's help. But I'm just here, and I'm willing to work.
All right, well, I think that we are done. Thank you, Miss Ennis, again. So,
all right, thank you guys.